Hi ladies, Sarah here today with Ask Becky and Sarah answering your reader questions. And today's question is, do you recommend the keto diet? So I'm here today without Becky because she did the video last week, so I'm here to answer this question. I actually did the keto diet myself for over 2 months, about 2.5 months this spring, and I was definitely really curious about the diet. I'd heard and read so many different things, and I did a lot of research before I delved into it. So I'm here to share from my own personal experience and also my recommendations as someone who has lost 100 pounds and is maintaining that. I'm not a doctor, however, and I am not giving you any medical advice, so absolutely talk to your doctor. Okay, so first of all, what is keto? So the keto diet, the goal is to be in a state of ketosis, and the idea of ketosis is that you are burning fat rather than burning carbohydrates. And the way to do that is eating a specific diet plan. So when you're eating keto, you are eating about 75% of your calories from fat and about 20% of your calories from protein and just 5% of your calories from carbohydrates. So what does that equal out to in a regular diet? That was something I didn't really know. I'd never counted carbs before, but it's very, very low carb. It's very low carb. So if you did Atkins like back in the 70s or 80s, it's pretty similar to that. And I know people say, no, keto is really different. Well, it's actually really similar. It's somewhat similar to the paleo diet. The paleo diet was really popular maybe 5 to 10 years ago and still is quite popular, but maybe not as much as it was. Paleo is actually higher in carbohydrates than keto. So keto is similar to paleo, but you're eating even lower carbs. This is very low carb. So to give you an idea of what maybe someone typically would eat in a day if they're eating a keto diet, breakfast might be eggs and bacon. You might have a little bit of vegetables in with your eggs, but not too much. Alternately, some people drink what is called Bulletproof Coffee. It's super popular. It's coffee with fat in it. So butter or oil, like MCT oil is really popular, and you blend it all up until it's frothy. And then some people either skip breakfast or lunch because the fat is really satisfying, but if you're eating lunch, I would always eat lunch. I didn't do a lot of fasting. That would be like a salad with a few vegetables on top of the romaine, like some cucumber, a little bit of tomato. You can't have too much tomato. A little bit of carrot, maybe like shredded carrot, and then cheese and ranch dressing. So that might be a typical lunch. Snacking is discouraged, and I will say I really was pretty satisfied with my meals because there is so much fat that I didn't do a lot of snacking, but snacking might be things like cheese, pepperoni. You could do like celery sticks with cream cheese, something like that. And then dinner, you're going to focus on really just your protein and your fat. So your main meat that you would normally eat, like if it was chicken or beef or something like that, and ideally you want to choose high fat, so you're wanting more of like the chicken thighs rather than the chicken breast. Or if you cook a chicken breast, you want to cook it in some fat, like some butter or oil or something. And then some vegetables, but in limited amounts. So like half a cup of broccoli would be a typical serving size. I remember when I was researching keto, and one of the they were doing some different lists, and they were saying like good vegetables to have when you're on keto. One of those was olives. I was laughing a little bit. I'm like, I don't really see olives as like this super healthy vegetable. They're great fat and they're good to have, but I don't really see that as like this main vegetable. So if you hadn't already guessed, my overall recommendation, I'm not a big fan of the keto diet. I don't really recommend it for most people. And I have two specific reasons for that. One is what I just talked about. You are eating a very low produce diet when you are on keto, very low. And I was really quite surprised at just how low. Fruit is pretty much totally off the table. You can have some limited amounts of fruit, but we're talking a very small amount of fruit. And then vegetables, that's a little bit more controversial. I mean, there's definitely some people who would say, oh, I eat keto and I eat tons of vegetables, but I don't think so. And for me, coming off of Weight Watchers, where I was eating like just these big, beautiful salads and vegetable soup and 2 vegetables with every, dinner, you're not doing that when you're eating a keto diet. It's just too much carbohydrate. How those percentages translate out is typically like 10 to 20 grams of carbs per day. And I didn't really have any idea. I had never done low carb, what that means. But an apple has 20 grams of carbs, a small apple, or a banana. So you're not eating any of those foods, and even vegetables. A half to a cup of vegetables might be 10 grams of carbs. So one serving would pretty much take all of your carbs for the day. So that's the number one reason I'm not a huge fan of keto, is I think that it's just really difficult to get in that produce that is just so healthy for you. It's so good for you. There's so much in it that's so good for you. And then number 2, the reason that I don't really recommend keto is that it's really tough to maintain. This is a strict diet. Now, that's not to say that there aren't keto alternatives to all kinds of different foods. There are pretty much any recipe you can think of, you can find a keto alternative. But that's when you start venturing into things that aren't really all that healthy. You're starting to use a lot of ingredients. It's very expensive, and it's not really the way the diet was intended. It really was intended on just focusing on some of these key, whole foods with lots and lots of fat. I read something when I was doing my research, and it was a nutritionist who works almost exclusively with super elite athletes. And there's definitely some interest in the keto diet in the athlete community, because if you can make your body run on fat, even the skinniest person has hours and hours and hours and hours worth of fat inside their body. That's something just really huge for endurance exercise. And I used to do triathlons, and so I'm really interested in that whole science. And generally what we find is that athletes, their performance is a little bit less when they run on fat, but we're talking tiny amounts. So this is the difference of a few seconds. That some of the super elite athletes, that might make a really big difference. But for those of us who are just doing it, for fun, a few seconds is not going to make that big of a difference. So there's definitely something to the diet, and there's this whole world now of sort of the fat adapted athlete, and can you do this? So what this nutritionist was saying is that long term, he could not get his athletes to follow the diet because it's just so strict. They could do it for a short period of time, but when you start looking at over, a whole year or a whole season, they would slip, and they would not be able to stick with it. And what he was saying is, these are people who are so dedicated. These are people who probably have the most personal discipline of anyone that you would know. And these are people who are very highly motivated to be successful with their nutrition, because this is their job, this is their performance, this is their sport. So his argument was, if they can't stick with the diet, it's going to be really tough for you as a typical person going through typical life to stick with this diet long term. So those are the 2 main reasons I'm not a huge fan of keto. The third one would be, for me personally, it didn't work. I lost about 10 or 12 pounds the first week and a half, which is from water weight, and then I just gradually started to gain it back. Now, I'm not saying I'm typical of the regular person, and I have already lost my weight, and I'm just kind of playing around with these last pounds that I kind of go up and down. So I might not be typical, and I know that there's people who have great success with it, but overall, I personally wouldn't recommend it. I do know we have some women in this group who do keto, and I think that's great. I applaud you, and I think if it's working for you, that's awesome. I'm not trying to knock something that is working for you, and I think especially for some people who have some autoimmune things going on, there could be some real benefits to keto, and I think that we're still in the researching phase and trying to learn that. But generally, my recommendation still has to stay the same. If you are the average person, like most of us are, and just trying to find what's going to be successful for weight loss for you, I don't think keto is the way to go. I just personally don't think it's the way to go for long-term sustainability and overall health, the overall health benefits. So if you have questions about keto, I'd love for you to post them. I didn't get into all the details of things. There's questions about if you're diabetic, if you have thyroid issues, how to maintain the diet, what are healthy foods, and I'll be glad to answer any of those questions in the comments after. But for now, I just wanted to give my general recommendation. So I am Sarah with Faithful Finish Lines, and if you haven't yet, we would love for you to enroll in our free 5-day challenge. It's called Grow Your Faith, Lose the Weight. So at Faithful Finish Lines, we focus just especially on how you can grow your relationship with God and focus on His power guiding you through your weight loss journey. So I will leave a link in the comments below. That's completely free. It's 5 days. It comes right to your inbox. So it's super easy for you. It has a gorgeous workbook. If you haven't joined that yet, come and join our free 5-day challenge. So I'm Sarah with Faithful Finish Lines, and I've been so glad to join you today for this session of Ask Becky and Sarah. If you have other future questions that you would like us to answer, leave those in the comments, and maybe we'll answer one of your questions in the future. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.